Welcome to our October Industry Luncheon today. I'm Robert Vincent, your 2020 Board President. BOMA Phoenix is honored that you are here today. Our goal is to provide membership with impactful and relevant luncheons, even on a virtual platform. At this time, we'd like to ask to use the Zoom Q&A feature to submit a question to the panel at any time during the presentation. Board announcements. The BOMA office had sent registered attendees a $25 electronic gift card for Grubhub, so you can have lunch on us. So be sure to check your email inbox or spam folder for that, and then also check your mailbox. We want to remind you to register for our presentation next Wednesday, Risk Management and Return to Work Scenarios in a COVID-19 World, with Julie Pace and Heidi Nungilman. Be sure to have some great information for us, so be sure to register and check that out. Sponsorships are available for our December's annual member award presentation. We would like your participation to end the year on strong, so please be sure to check that out. And we'd love to see you come December for our holiday luncheon. At this time, I'd like to recognize our annual partners and to remind you that BOMA Greater Phoenix recognizes that we cannot do what we do alone. It is the generosity of our faithful annual partners and the strength of our volunteers that make this possible. Throughout the year, we collaborate with our sponsors to put on successful events such as today's. Whether you're an annual partner or an event-specific sponsor, we acknowledge your contribution today. So thank you in advance for supporting the association that supports you. I'd like to recognize at this time our representatives from our 2020 Platinum Partners, which are Gorman Roofing and Transcend Security Services. I'm now going to read our gold and silver level partners. I want to encourage you to support the vendors that support you and the programming you want to see from the BOMA Association. Our 2020 gold partners are Ace Asphalt, Ace Building Maintenance, Allied Universal Security Services, America Roofing, ATI Restoration, Brightview Landscape, Court Furniture, DBL, and Sunland Asphalt. Our 2020 silver partners I'd like to recognize are A1 Concrete Repair and Waterproofing, ABM Industries, Acel Communications, Agave Environmental Contracting, APS Solutions for Business, Benson Systems, Biojanitorial Services, Cactus Sweeping, Centric Elevator, CCS, GP Pro, also known as Georgia Pacific, GPM Landscape, Harvard Maintenance, Interstate Restoration, Maintenance Mart, Orange Commercial Janitorial, Otis Elevator, Paragon Services, Rose Paving, Sealmaster of Arizona, SRP, and lastly, TEPCON Construction. Thank you all for your support and our 2020 annual partners and your commitment to BOMA. Again, we cannot do it without you, so thank you. At this time, I'd like to request Susan Ingstrom, our governor of the 2020 Board of Directors and also head of the Nominations Committee, to give us an update. Susan, take it away.
All right. So as you all know from the many emails that I bugged everyone with, we opened our election process about 2.5 months ago. And due to COVID, I understand it's a pretty underwhelming response, but I thought it was a pretty decent response anyway. So here's the people you have running for your 2021 candidates. We've got Monica Andreas. Monica currently serves as the Allied Chair. She would like another shot at it. So she's with Interstate Restoration. And then Jerome Joseph with Brightview also is running for Allied Chair. Your slate of officers is Michael Chadwick for President. He's with Bridge Commercial Real Estate. Melissa Scott with the ASU Research Park, and that's she's running for vice president. And then Patty Brown with Ryan Companies is running for secretary treasurer. You've got for your board candidates, Rebecca Engel. This is in alphabetic order too, so I don't want you to think it's in preference of any kind. Alphabetic order. Rebecca Engel with RW Partners. Michael, I'm sorry, Michael, I'm going to butcher your name. Karatachia from Titan Restoration. Monica Greenman with Transwestern. Suzanne Logan from Restoration Management Company. Greg Pender with Highland Commercial Roofing. Michael Scott with Rose Paving. And Jennifer Weiner with Via West. So those are your candidates for 2021. During this luncheon, Olympia will be sending you a Survey Monkey. And from that Survey Monkey, you will be able to vote on the candidates. We ask that you do that promptly because the elections will close tomorrow night at midnight. So please get your votes in, vote early and vote often. And we'll talk to you all next week or next month. Thank you.
Fantastic, Susan. Appreciate that update. And I couldn't agree with you more. Vote early and vote often. So get involved with this organization. We thank you. All right, let's get right to business. We have a fantastic panel for you today, and I'd like to offer a warm introductions to them. Our first guest on the panel for you today needs no formal introduction. She exemplifies true leadership at her core. She has extensive experience creating and supervising teams of property managers, accountants, and maintenance personnel, as well as presenting property strategies to institutional owners for multi-million square foot portfolios. She has over 20 years of experience as a licensed real estate professional, leading, managing, and overseeing property management services for institutional and large investors, owners right here in Arizona. She maintains an intense focus on problem solving and building outstanding relationships, and is responsible for strategic business planning and management of client services. Her specialties include client and tenant relations, proactive management, and leading teams. She's an impactful mentor and leads by example. She also enjoys hiking, taking long walks after dinner, and serving alongside her team members at St. Mary's Food Bank. Without further ado, please help me welcome our own BOMA member, Sue Cannon. I hear the applause right now. Yes, yes, I hear it. I hear it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Our second guest on the panel today is a strong up-and-comer in the industrial markets. He specializes in leasing and sales of industrial warehouse, back office properties, and land throughout the greater Phoenix area. He brings a ton of experience from Oakland, California market and has earned several accomplishments along the way. He has been recognized by NAIOP as the Emerging Broker of the Year in 2018, along with the Industrial Broker Team of the Year Award, and also earned the Rookie of the Year Award in 2019. He brings not only youth and vigor to the table, but also a talent to produce deals like no other. He has been impactful with the Phoenix Industrial Team, and we are thankful he was able to carve out some time today for us. He enjoys playing golf, working out, watching the Cardinals play on Sunday, and him and his wife are patiently waiting their arrival, their firstborn, due in March. Please welcome Phil Haenel, Director of Industrial Services for Cushman Wakefield.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Phil. We appreciate your time today and your input. We're looking forward to it. All righty, our third guest on the panel today has over 34 years of brokerage experience focused on the office building sector. He joined the firm in 1990 and has been consistently recognized as a top broker and a top producer in the Phoenix office. He enjoys diverse areas of practice and including tenant representation, office agency, and project development. Also, investment sale transactions and land sale transactions. He has led negotiations on major operations service centers, including Chubb, Humana, Aetna, Cigna, Healthcare, Brookfield Residential, Wells Fargo, Pulte Homes, and USAA's land acquisition for its regional operational center. He's also been involved in several very significant lease and sale transactions, including the corporate headquarters for PetSmart, Circle K, Zelle, University of Phoenix, and international cruise excursions. He has completed hundreds of lease and sale transactions over the years and has advised developer clients on the development of more than 6 million square feet of office and back office flex projects. He is currently partnered with Jeff Wentworth and Chris Walker, whose team provides expertise in office leasing agency, tenant representation, investment, and land sale transactions. Oh, I think I just repeated myself there. We're getting a double layer there, Mike.
All right. Thank you, Robert.
No
Happy
problem,
to be here.
No problem. Lastly, he enjoys cycling with his wife, exploring his taste buds at unknown restaurant establishments, and enjoys staying active and fit. Please help me welcome Mike Beall, Executive Managing Director of Office Services at Cushman Wakefield.
Thanks, Robert. Happy to be here. Honored to be here.
Thank you, Mike. Likewise. Okay, we're bringing up our fourth guest of the panel today. And he has an extensive history in sale of retail properties. He has been a part of over 500 transactions totaling more than 400 million in total consideration and nearly 6 million square feet of retail sold. He has completed over 50 new development, redevelopment, or pad deals with a total consideration of more than 60 million. He specializes in capital markets and manages his team National Investment Services portfolio. He is heavily involved in the sale of single tenant investment properties across the country. Some of his clients that he has worked with are Armstrong Development, Cole Capital, Lawrence and Geyser Development, CVS, and Kimco, just to name a few. He has been awarded the top retail producer in 2016, 17, 18, and 19 by Cushman Wakefield. And rumor has it he might be on the way to 2020. We'll see. In his personal time, he has traveled to over 60 countries around the world, is an avid pickleball player, and enjoys spending time with his wife and 17-month-old daughter, Sarah. Please welcome Chris Hollenbeck, Executive Director of Retail Services at Cushman Wakefield.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate your time today. And finally, our moderator for this event today is our very own Vice President of BOMA Greater Phoenix. He has been faithfully serving BOMA Greater Phoenix for the past several years. He is originally from New Jersey and most recently started an exciting opportunity with Bridge Investment Group. He is currently managing the office towers at Phoenix Gateway Center. He enjoys being a wonderful father, going camping, lets his hair down occasionally when listening to Bon Jovi, and enjoys taking long walks on the beach. Please give a warm welcome.
Absolutely true. The only song I ever karaoke'd was Bon Jovi. So well done. Well done. Yeah.
Michael, thank you for your time and for your input and for your coordination of today's panel. I give the mic over to you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. And again, thank you everyone from Cushman for taking time to do this panel. And we'll just dive into it. And all the participants, there's a Q&A at the bottom of the screen. If you can type in some questions, we'll try to get to some throughout the program, but if not, we'll answer them towards the end. So the first question is just simply, what are the impacts of COVID on industrial, office, retail, and all that stuff? And we'll just start with Sue, if you don't mind, just kind of giving a big overview on the impact of the management side of our world. That'd be great.
I'm happy to. Hi, everyone. So as opposed to my colleagues who appear to be sort of traveling the state right now, I am coming to you from the corporate offices of Cushman, which is currently open at 50% capacity. I realize that today, in large part, our audience is property management professionals and our vendor partners. And before I jump into the impacts of COVID, I did just want to take a moment to say thank you. When you choose this industry, you ultimately become quite good at handling emergency situations. And the individuals that are out there operating know that there's action to be taken. And if they take quick and calculated action, that they can mitigate different situations. So I'm so thankful to Cushman and Wakefield for having rolled out our protocols so that when the market shut down, our teams knew what to do, and it took a little of that uncertainty away. I'm also grateful that they rolled out the recovery readiness guide to the industry so that before we reopened, we had guidelines. And again, our professionals are used to acting in case of emergency. It's the uncertainty that causes some stress. So all of you performed beautifully, and it does take a little courage to be out and continue operating as we are and will going forward. So for that, I just thank everyone. Also, our vendor partners. Without you, we would not have been able to make arrangements for additional security, additional cleaning, our PPE and our hand sanitizers and our signage. So you really helped us to be successful during the event. So thank you as well. And now I'll jump into the impacts of COVID. Our group in Phoenix manages a little over 28 million square feet. So the report and statistics that I'm going to give you today are assembled from that team of individuals.
And I apologize, is that 28 million square feet all office, or is it a mix of office, industrial?
It's a mix, office, industrial, and retail.
Got it.
Okay. And I'll be reporting on occupancy, OPEX and budgeting, rent collection, and client interface. So I'll move through that fairly quickly. On the industrial side, as you might imagine, our occupancy is extremely strong. So we're at 95 to 100% of pre-COVID occupancy levels. There are some exceptions for tenant type. Churches, restaurants, entertainment venues are open, but at a 50% capacity. In terms of operating expense and budgeting, it is business as usual for the industrial portfolio. There have been no changes to the approach for budgeting for 2021. And those budgets have already been, for the most part, submitted for 2021. In terms of rent collection and delinquencies, still fairly strong. We are down about 5.9% from first quarter delinquencies, or I'm sorry, first quarter rent collection. And 17 to 18% of our tenants have requested rent relief for the industrial portfolios. Those rent relief requests have been either declined or handled with some type of deferment and restructure. And then finally, client interface. Client interface has increased substantially, but not physically. Very few clients are coming to town, but rather we're reporting and speaking with them on almost a weekly basis, taking lots of photos and acting as their eyes and ears at the portfolio. So moving, question?
No, I just saying great. Yep.
Okay, so moving on to retail. Our retail portfolio is open at 80 to 100% of occupancy. Those businesses that are open, though, have been affected, depending on tenant type again. So open at 50% capacity. And of course, restaurants, schools, so forth, are all very unique in the handling of COVID. OPEX, though, and budgeting is, again, business as usual. So our managers have not been instructed to budget differently for 2021. Delinquencies in retail are high and rising. So we are down 28.6% from first quarter revenues, and 41% of tenants have requested rent relief. So a much higher percentage. Again, most of that relief, if granted, has been structured with deferments or restructured lease terms. And again, very few physical visits, but lots of communication with the clients, daily AR, checking, and so forth. And then finally, office. So office, across the board, our office portfolio balances right at 20 to 30% of pre-COVID occupancy levels. So those tenants that have not returned to the office buildings are telling us that they will either return January 2021 or sometime before the end of second quarter 2021. So January to June. Now that's a little bit of a moving target because originally we were told after Labor Day there might be a surge. So our office tenancy is being very careful. A very small percentage of office tenancy has vacated and is pursuing sublease and termination options, but they are still paying their rent. So
Are you seeing, sorry to interrupt, Sue, but for the office reoccupancy, are you seeing anything where they're asking for some sort of survey to be filled out by the landlords or any procedures in place to make sure that they feel comfortable to come back and that's helping their decision?
yes, lots of inquiries relative to the operations of the building and what type of adjustments have been made so that when they return, they do feel safe. Most of our teams prepared PowerPoints that touched on all of those items, sent them to, obviously cleared them with the client, but then we're able to present those to the tenants so that they would have a visual of what they could expect when they returned, and so that they had commitments on certain areas that were being evaluated and monitored. I'll move on quickly. So OpEx and budgeting, our clients are very conservatively budgeting for 2021. So the majority of them are anticipating full occupancy at their leased levels effective January. And the budgets are prepared in that manner. Many of the leasing projections are conservative as well. And many of the clients are including COVID-related increased expenses for the first 6 months of 2021. And then rent collection. Rent collection is still quite strong, down 5.2% from the first quarter average, but actually up slightly, 4% in our medical office portfolio. And 9% of the office tenancy has requested rent relief. Again, very few have vacated and are pursuing sublease, at least have reported to us that they have vacated and are pursuing sublease opportunities or termination. And then again, client interface, limited physically, but very active with photos, reporting, and AR. But I did want to mention before I pass that we do have several ways that we can be proactive, not only for COVID, but just in the operations of the building. And I do have a slide to share. So let me share that screen very quickly, and it'll just give an overview. We have a comprehensive solutions slide deck that gives an idea of where you can focus your efforts in maintaining and operating the buildings for the future. So this is an interactive slide, just very quickly for operations. We're all doing this, but touchless products, screen guards at security concierge, hand sanitizer stations, package delivery, and social distancing. We think that will continue through 2021, and we're budgeting in that way. Cleaning, everyone is, now adjusting for high touch areas. There are new technologies to be vetted the Diversity Sky, the ultraviolet light cleaning, the autonomous robot, the ULV misting systems, which are fairly low cost. And then finally, mechanical. So lots of focus on the ASHRAE standards and whether or not you can incorporate those into the operation of your buildings. Focus on HVAC, water safety management, and then the indoor air quality. So our teams are have an eye on all of these types of operations when they're budgeting for 2021. And that's it.
That's great. Thank you so much. Very, very great overview on what you're seeing on the management side of the effects of COVID. So I guess the next one would be Phil, if you don't mind going into what you're seeing on the impacts on the industrial side of our world.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Michael and team. It's an honor to be on the panel and be a part of this event. Thankfully, on the industrial side, we've seen a ton of new leasing, and we're setting records in Arizona and nationally. Absorption in Arizona last quarter was over 3 million square feet, and it's shaping up to be another record year. Just to kind of run through some quick key transactions during COVID on the leasing side, our team leased 380,000 square foot cross-dock in Southwest Phoenix to ABB. Amazon has been on a tear in our market and across the country. They leased a 1 million square foot spec building in Southwest Phoenix. They leased 2 buildings totaling 600,000 square feet that Link Blackstone owns on a pre-lease, and have also done a handful of deals in the airport and Southeast Valley. Some other notable tenants that have been very active, Honeywell just leased a 300,000 square foot building in Southwest Phoenix and a 100,000 square foot building in the Sky Harbor Airport submarket. Ball Corporation inked a monster deal with Prologis at 48th Avenue, just south of the I-10. White Claw is doing a 700,000 square foot build-to-suit in Glendale. All right, someone's, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of beeping going on.
Sorry if that was me. But White Claw just building a 600,000 square foot building in Glendale for distribution manufacturing, which is huge for the market. And that was California, Reno, Vegas, and thankfully Phoenix or Glendale won out on that. Another key deal during COVID, Five Below just broke ground on a 900,000 square foot distribution center in Buckeye. They wanted to serve California and other markets, but not be in California. So that was a huge win for the market. A company called M. Lilly, a mattress company, just pre-leased a 700,000 square foot building that Merit and First Industrial built. And I saw an interesting article this morning. Prologis, who's the #1 industrial owner in the world, they reported 50 million square feet in new leases across the nation for the third quarter. And that's 30% year over year increase. And it's double what Prologis underwrote when this pandemic started. So great news for the industrial market there. And warehouse and distribution rents rose 6% year over year nationally to an all-time average high. And just a couple trends during COVID on the leasing front, we've seen a ton of cold storage, freezer, beverage companies active in Southwest Phoenix. The e-commerce, it's on fire in Arizona, along with across the country. Out of that 50 million square feet mentioned before with Prologis, 30% of that was e-commerce related. So we thought that was interesting. We're seeing Oh, sorry, Michael.
No, I was just going to ask that. I mean, obviously the e-commerce happened because of the shutdown and no, people not going to stores. Do you think that's sustainable? Like all this releasing from Amazon, do you think that's going to continue, or do you think it's going to kind of flatten?
Yeah, and great question. We've on our tenants in the market list. I mean, we're seeing still a ton of e-commerce 3PL users. So with everything that's being built in Southwest Phoenix, hopeful that it'll continue. And the tenants in the market list is as strong as I've ever seen in my career. And the companies moving from California into Arizona, we just signed a lease with a group moving from Fremont and San Francisco into Southwest Phoenix. So it's.
Do you think that's a product of California having more restrictions on companies than in Phoenix or in Arizona?
Yeah, and I started my career in Oakland. I know firsthand it's tough to get deals done, and they've been a big ally for Arizona on getting some of these deals. And a lot of these companies like the Five Belows of the world, they want to serve California but not be in California. And the one negative we've seen on the industrial side, some of the smaller regional, the local credit tenants, sub 20,000 square feet, have been a little slower on the leasing velocity. We haven't seen major subleasing in that size segment, but the velocity is just not as strong as the 100,000 and up. In Southwest Phoenix and Goodyear, we're seeing a significant amount of developers in escrow on land, trying to take advantage of this increase in demand and really the leasing boom.
Great. So are you done?
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, that's all I got. Yeah, sorry to throw a lot.
No, I love it. Yeah, thank you so much for that overview on the trends, and very positive on the industrial side. It's great. So same question, Mike, on the office transactions and leasing. What are you seeing on the office side?
Well, this is going to be like the tale of two cities. It's a tough act to follow, industrial with Phil. So office doesn't quite have the same story as industrial, I think, as everybody kind of knows. But having said that, I would also say, I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to share. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah.
Yep, we can see it.
Yeah. So I would say, right now there's a lot of fear in the market, fear by employees wanting to go back to work. The office market, unlike the industrial market, is very, very soft. So, to keep it in context, where, the last few years, we've had some pretty significant size transactions that have occurred in the Phoenix area to really move the occupancy needle and net absorption. Right now, we only have the single largest direct deal that's been signed this year in the market is Amazon. You guys getting the feedback on? Is that just me?
Yeah, I'm hearing
No.
feedback.
Yeah, I'm getting the feedback.
Well, I'm not sure how I can correct that.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't have our technology guys here to be able to deal with that. So I can just try to muddle through it. That's all I can do. Is it any better right now?
Muddle.
it's a little better.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
So the single largest direct deal that's been done in the market, I'm not talking about a sublease, that's been signed this year, not occupied, but signed, is an Amazon deal for 50,000 square feet in Tempe at one of our listings. And that was followed by a direct deal that Morgan Stanley had done over in Tempe at Rio 2100 Phase 5 for about 45,000 square feet. Amazon did a sublease for 65,000 square feet over at the Alameda, kind of on the Broadway curve there, and they subleased from Lennar. So there's a number of people, we kind of hear the stories all the time. It's We're going to see more sublease that's going to occur in the market. You may have heard rumblings that Nationwide may not occupy all of that space that they're building up at Cabazon, and that's been verified. That's true. And there's others out there. So, and Tempe's probably has more sublease space that's coming. And it's kind of the, that's obviously the #1 market in Phoenix. So the bigger the party, the bigger the hangover. So we'll start to see more of that. And I think that's going to put some pressures on existing landlords to get their spaces and spend money on spaces to get them kind of in a more habitable, quicker occupancy, even perhaps some spec suite with implementing some plug and play options. But the vast majority of the people that we talk to out there, both colleagues and employers, their employees are telling them that they want to get back to work. They like the connection, the collaboration. They don't get that. They may be productive working from home, but they're lacking that connection to culture and vision. And I think it's very difficult for a number of users or a number of employees to be working from home if you've got small kids or you don't have a house that's set up with a home office. It can be pretty disruptive, but I don't think there's confidence yet. And, there's been a number of employees like Sue was alluding to that are kind of delaying that decision. USAA is one of our clients. We're subleasing some space for them up in Deer Valley. They have 28,000 of their 33,000 employees working from home at the moment. Their migration is probably going to be, some of it will be later this year, most of it will be next year. And I think that's just kind of typical of what we kind of hear in the market until there's a vaccine or improved therapeutics. So I think the other question that we get a lot is, how do these densities, how are they impacted? Phoenix is known as a call center, service center market where we would see densities of 6 or 7 per thousand. And, is that gonna change in the future? So let me click on another slide here. So that's kind of the other question we get from, this is like a typical call center employee density right now. They were cramming them in there. We happen to think that the densities are going to decrease with more work from home. I don't think their footprints necessarily get smaller. I think their furniture configurations probably change. And I think there's a higher percentage of workforce that is going to be working remotely. So if that number was 10%, it could go up to 20, 25%. But the one thing that does is that it probably puts buildings that once were thought to have a disadvantage because of a low parking ratio. So those buildings were often eliminated because 6 and 7 per thousand were pretty common on parking ratios. Now that building that is 4 per thousand or maybe 5 becomes in play again. So quite simply because you have more people working from home. And so I think that's kind of one of the positive things for COVID long term is I think there's going to be more opportunity for other buildings over there that otherwise wouldn't see those kinds of deals.
I have another question kind of going back to what you're talking about with maybe less people in the office, so less desks. Do you see private offices becoming a trend again and getting away from the open work environment, or do you think it'll still remain as an open work environment?
I think you're still going to see, more of an open work environment. I still think that's an efficient kind of use of space. I just think you're going to have less people. I think there's going to be some hesitation for desk sharing. And I think people have kind of moved away from that. But I think you still have the ability to cycle a lot of people through with kind of a cubicle environment as opposed to an office environment. So then the other question we get a lot of, which is, leasing activity. And I think this slide is maybe an appropriate one. You got, Einstein right there, and he's saying, how fast you're going. Well, speed is relative. So right now the market is really, really slow. So the analogy is if we were doing 75 or 80 miles an hour pre-COVID, we're probably going 15 or 20 miles an hour right now. And that seems like you're stopped, especially if you're coming down the I-17 freeway from Flagstaff in the middle of the summer. That's kind of what it feels like right now. But we're not stopped, and there's still people transacting. I would say the bulk of our activity right now tends to be in the smaller tenant segment. There's certainly a lot of downsize, renew for the short term. That's the trend. I think I just did a 2-year extension for a financial services firm that I represent, and they're not prepared to make a long-term commitment right now because of uncertainty of COVID. They still think they need an office, but they just need 2 years and a bridge to kind of get through the next couple of years, so they can kind of figure out their longer-term strategy. And by the way, I think that same strategy could hold true for a building owner. And I've told some of our clients, look, this notion that you're competing with the building down the street right now, that's no longer the case. You're competing with a company who's going to have their employees working from home. And we have a number of renewal transactions that we're working on right now. And candidly, it's tough to compete with that. So to do a shorter term lease that you normally wouldn't do is kind of building a bridge to a better market for a landlord.
Can a question on that shorter term leases. So, historically, if a tenant wanted a short term one, they got to pay for that, right? So the rates go up. Are you finding that with the short term leases, the rates are kind of staying the same, or are they still going up a little bit, or are they actually going down because of the uncertainty?
Well, that's kind of the conventional wisdom, Michael, and you're right, is that people will pay a premium for that short term. And I think there's maybe a nominal premium, but there's not a big premium, because the alternative of somebody moving and working from home is pretty dramatic. And landlords, what they can't afford to do right now is lose a tenant, because there is not another tenant behind it to replace that cash flow. And so I don't think you have much opportunity to drive premium rents on short-term deals right now, unless it's a real unique circumstance. And I think the other aspect of that is sublease space. Like we all focus on the big blocks, but there's a lot more. We get 350 emails a day like everybody else on this call, and we're seeing more and more office sublease spaces available by smaller tenants. And I think that's going to have a dampening effect on what owners can do for direct deals. And it also puts pressure on them to get their spaces in a position where they can compete. So we have one building in Scottsdale, for example, where a tenant is downsizing, and our landlord is acquiring the existing furniture on one of the floors, so that if a user shows up and wants kind of quote plug and play, then at least there's the opportunity to do a short-term lease without a heavy capital investment. And the theory is that you'll have a lesser TI dollar out of pocket, because the user's more focused on short-term plug and play than he is modifying his space to exact standards. So,
and I imagine the submarket or the sublease market is valley-wide, right? It's not specific to a certain submarket, or is it?
No, it's I think where you saw in Tempe, North Tempe specifically, where you had the bulk of the net absorption and leasing activity occurring in the last 3 or 4 years, you definitely have seen a little bit more pop up in North Tempe, and then also in Scottsdale. But you're not seeing it as much, in some of those other markets. There is some around 44th Street in the Gateway area. There's some in Camelback, but the vast majority of it tends to be in North Tempe at the moment. There's some in Chandler as well. So it's not isolated into one market, but it's certainly concentrated more in that submarket than others. So, we do like the spec suite program. Yeah, we think there's more tenants that are going to be asking for short term. So I know that's a difficult conversation for a lot of investors to have that talk with their lender because of spec suite and the expenditure. But I'll take Amazon, for example. We had kind of a semi-spec suite done at 1330 Southern, and right, wrong, or otherwise, Amazon perceived that they were going to be able to get into that space faster than they would at some other building. And so it definitely enhanced the leasability of that space. So, you know, and it gets to be a conversation that's tough because, you know, landlords don't want to spend money at a time like this when they can candidly at least afford it, but it's a very good strategy. So anyway, I do think I'm having said all the, you know, kind of Debbie Downer things that I've said right now. I would also say this, that, you know, we are getting more inquiries from tenant rep brokers, and our tenant guys are getting more inquiries from out-of-state account management teams about Phoenix and the opportunity and the value proposition of coming here. It doesn't take a genius to see all the California license plates that are driving around our city and what they've done in terms of keeping our residential market healthy. So we think that dam is going to break at some point into 21 when there's confidence to return, that we're going to see a lot of users come over from California, more than we have in the past, of wanting to make that move and have offices here in the Phoenix area. So we'll compete with Texas or Nevada or Utah like we always have, but I think Phoenix could be in a good position compared to other markets in the country to capture some of that migration that's undoubtedly occur, especially with some of the you know, some of the tax rates that they're implementing and some of the regulations that they have in California right now. I'll just hit one other thing, Michael, before you go, and we get this question a lot. I'm sure some of your folks on the call here would ask the question about, you know, what's going on with the election. And you know, I saw, let me see if I can find it. I saw this. I guess I can't do it. I saw a headline where there's a meteor that's going to hit Earth like the day before the election. It's going to be the size of the refrigerator, and it could hit Earth. It could just brush us. So the question was, what happened with the election? So, you know, who knows? Who really knows? But here's my solution right here: giant meteor for president. Solution to believe in, and that's it. That's, you know, that's the ticket right there.
There you go.
Anyway, that's all I got.
Yeah, no, it's great. I love it. Very good understanding of what's going on and how it's impacting us. It's just a matter, like you said, that hard conversation with the spec suites. So it's that question of, do you do the 1,000 square footers or 10,000 square footers? It's kind of where is there a sweet spot, and how many or what size?
Yeah, I mean, conventional wisdom is, you know, you always did them under 5,000 square feet, and they're certainly, you know, those are very, very expensive to build on their own. So if you have an area where you can build out, you know, a group of them in various sizes, and it's all about space merchandising, bread on a shelf, if you will. So those suites do move that are less than 3,000 feet. But I would also say for the big service centers that are up to 25,000 square feet, get that in a semi-spec ready condition that somebody can kind of step into with not a lot of effort.
Great. Well, thank you. So
My pleasure.
last but not least, if you don't mind, Chris, talking a little bit about how the retail has been impacted by COVID, that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll try to keep mine short and have plenty of time for questions, since retail, everyone can touch it and feel it and visits retail. So there's usually a lot of questions just about what they see in their neighborhoods and everywhere else. I'm going to talk about the good, the okay, and the bad with retail currently. And I'll start with the bad. We've seen a lot of bankruptcies this year. JCPenney, Neiman Marcus, Pier 1, GNC, all filed bankruptcy. Was that due to COVID? Probably not. You know, the main thing we're seeing is a lot of these companies had way too much debt. They were obsolete companies anyway, like a GNC, where you can buy most of your supplements online or anything else anyway. COVID just accelerated the inevitable. So, and we're going to see a lot more bankruptcies of just companies that were over leveraged, that probably weren't going to make it for the next 5 years anyway, going out this year. So that's one of the bad things. Obviously, another bad thing, gyms, restaurants, bars, movie theaters, businesses that have been affected really heavily because of COVID. When the government puts restrictions on your occupancy, even being open, it's really hard to make it. So a restaurant, a bar, a theater, they're not made to work at 50%. So it'll be interesting to see over time what restaurants, gyms, bars, theaters make it out of this. Even after the government opens up fully 100% these things, how long is it going to take the consumer to feel comfortable going to a packed bar or a busy gym or some of these other things? So it's going to take a little bit of time to see how those all unfold. Some of the okay news, you drive around town, you go to a grocery anchored shopping center or a retail center, it all looks pretty busy. I mean, there's not a lot of going out of business signs. There's not a lot of new for lease signs in the windows. So you haven't seen a lot of tenants just close up. There's a few reasons for this. Number one reason is the CARES Act. The PPP money that was given out to small businesses was a huge lifesaver for all the small businesses and retail tenants around the country. You've also had landlords really working closely with tenants, deferring rent, working on rent schedules, just really helping out to tenants in general. So you've had a perfect combination of the government assisted money to help pay for rent, as well as landlords really not wanting these tenants to leave because they know there's nowhere to really backfill the space with. So landlords have been really willing to work with tenants. It'll be interesting again to see what happens once a lot of this PPP money is already run out. So we really need a second stimulus. That's going to be a next step to keeping a lot of small businesses, small retailers still open and operating. And at some point, landlords are going to need to collect rent. Sue mentioned, there's still, 80 to 100% occupancy for retail, but there was a lot more delinquencies rising. So as delinquencies rise, if there isn't another stimulus check that goes to small businesses, and if consumers aren't comfortable going to retail boutiques or their nail salon or wherever, then we are going to see some issues coming up. We might see it as early as the next couple of months. People might be holding on till first quarter next year, but at some point we are going to see some vacancy go up in retail. And right now, everyone's just been holding on because of government assistance and because of landlords helping out these tenants. The good news for Phoenix especially. I mean, we are still growing like crazy. Mike Beall mentioned it. People are moving in from LA and San Francisco, Chicago, and everywhere else, which is going to help retail. Retail always follows residential. More people that live in a neighborhood means there's more bodies to go shop at a shopping center or a mall. So that's going to continue to help out our business significantly. You're also seeing new entrepreneurial businesses. You're seeing ghost kitchens popping up in old vacant retail spaces, which is essentially a large industrial kitchen that other restaurants will lease out so that they can have off-site kitchens for Uber Eats and DoorDash because there's so many people more delivering and eating at home. So you're seeing things like that. You're going to see a lot of restaurateurs now being able to get a restaurant space they never could have gotten in the past because there was no space available. So you're going to see new restaurateurs opening up. So there's going to be new entrepreneurial businesses coming out of all this, and that always happens anytime there's a pullback in the market for retail. On the investment market, we're seeing single tenant safe deals. A lot of the deals that I sell for a living, like at Starbucks or McDonald's or Walgreens, we've never seen lower cap rates. There's just a really big flight to safety with people wanting to put their money into a very safe asset that they know they can hold on to and won't have any issues. We're also seeing a big influx of California buyers that are trying to, sell their properties in California before some of the new propositions may pass that affect real estate taxes and rent ceilings in California, moving their money over to Arizona. So shockingly, we've never seen higher values in real estate for very safe, sound real estate, mostly single tenant corporate credit stuff. If you move into more of the shadow anchored shopping centers, where you may have 6 to 10 tenants, you're probably having one or two of those tenants that might not be paying rent. They're a little bit harder to sell right now, but banks, lenders are opening up and looking at those deals again. So you are seeing traditional shadow anchored shopping centers now trading on the open market. And then if you get into the big power centers, the big Walmart anchored centers, the big lifestyle centers, those aren't trading at all. There's no activity. There's buyers that want to buy those. There's sellers that want to sell them, but no lenders are getting comfortable. There's no debt out there for those types of properties, mainly because of fears of second waves of COVID, that and most of these centers do have a large gym or a large movie theater or something, that even if they're open and operating right now, lenders are still not comfortable with what might be happening through flu season, through the holidays, and just rent payments in general. So that's kind of a quick overview on both the just retail and then also the investment market.
On the leasing side, are you starting to see clauses being put into retail leases regarding pandemics?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're seeing it in every single new lease. Starbucks has been the one that's been the hardest on it. I mean, they will not do a new deal without the COVID language lease structures. We're typically they're all different, but they might say if we have to close down to 50%, then we only have to pay 50% rent. And if we have to be closed down for 90 days or 120 days, then we can just get out of our lease altogether. So that's definitely pandemic clauses are going into every single lease nowadays.
And how are the landlords responding to that? I mean, that seems pretty strong to say.
Not well. I don't think any of them like it too much. Yeah. It depends how desperate they are for a deal. A lot of build-to-suit developers that are building a Starbucks or a Chick-fil-A or whatever, they're really pushing back because they're investing a lot of capital to build a new building for these guys. But if it's a second generation space and it's a sub shop coming into an old center, then they might be open to still discussing those clauses more. It just depends how much capital risk is at stake for a landlord. But that's going to be the big struggle for the next couple of years, is landlords and tenants both getting the new normal on that lease clause. So that's.
And then I have another fun one. So if a landlord agreed to modify a lease and put it in an amendment, right? Like it's solidified. Yeah. Does some of these retail tenants come back 30, 60 days later for another amendment because the world didn't open up the way everyone assumed?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that were overly optimistic, and they thought that everyone would be back to normal by now. And they thought, hey, just get us through the summertime, get us through our 3 months of PPP money that we did have set away for rent, and we'll be good to go. And now that this is drying up, there's a lot of second swipes at the apple, 100%.
That makes sense. And I guess I can ask that question to Mike as well. Are you seeing that in the office side, where on some of these that were some rent relief given and amendments solidified, are you seeing them coming back for another round of some sort of relief, or is everyone kind of living with it and trying to make it work?
I'd love to have Sue weigh in on that, but I can tell you, in a number of our landlords that had requests for relief in the conversation, I think most of our landlords were open to the discussion of some sort of deferment. But when you actually ask that user to provide, the business plan and the financial history and the justification for it, 90% of those requests just evaporated and went away. So a lot of them were really just trying to be opportunistic and take advantage of COVID, but didn't really have the evidence to prove that they were adversely impacted. And that was early on, and I haven't seen much resurgence on that, short of a restaurant use or some sort of quasi-retail use that happened to be in an office building. But if it was a strict office tenant, we didn't see a lot of that.
That makes sense. Sue, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll chime in there. That's exactly what we saw in every product line. So lots of rent relief requests, but when those tenants were provided with packages that had the forms to fill out and the information that was requested, many of them fell out, and we didn't hear back from them. Not so much in retail. Our retail tenants did, continue with the request, but more so in office and industrial.
Got it. And,
Hey,
and I'm not even going to ask you, Phil, because your world's doing good, so you're fine. Chris, did you have anything else that you wanted to add on the retail side?
No, that's it. That's my.
I would just
spiel.
echo one thing that Chris said about California buyers. There are, kind of a new wave of buyers in the Phoenix office market that we hadn't seen before. And, it'll be interesting to see where some of these buildings actually trade at. But they like the Phoenix story. They like the population growth story. They like the job growth story. They like everything that we know about Phoenix because we're proud of our community here. And where before they looked at Phoenix as a, maybe a second tier market. But if you think about Phoenix, by and large, occupancy and net absorption is driven by suburban office. And that's kind of the big story that people talk about where, I was on a phone call yesterday with a institutional investor in San Francisco, and a lot of the employees don't want to go back to work because they don't want to get on mass transportation and go down to the peninsula and then have to go on a high rise to go up to their building. So they're staying home, and we think that Phoenix is poised because of the nature of our suburban office, and so we're seeing kind of strong investor appetite. Pricing still has to be right, and there still is definitely that question on where we're at on rents and how rents will respond to what undoubtedly will be some level of increased vacancy. So that's being factored in on their risk and the pricing, but there's investors here that we've never seen before. I think that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great news for us. So I think that's just overall, all four of you, thank you so much for your input on how it's impacted your different aspects of the commercial real estate world. We do have a couple questions here that people have written in. I'm going to combine two of them together. One asked, what are some of the adjustments that have been made to the office building? And another one asked, do you see any tenants asking for HVAC concerns in the office building? So kind of combining them, Sue, I imagine this is your world. And then maybe Mike sees some of it on the lease negotiation of what a tenant's asking for what the building's doing. But I know you talked a little bit about it in your slideshow, Sue, but what are definitely the things you have adjusted and things that you've kicked around but might not necessarily have done, if that makes sense?
Sure. So I think as more of a, I wouldn't consider it marketing, but prior to the reopening, I mentioned that we prepared PowerPoints, and that was to give the tenants a visual of what they could expect when they came back to the building. It also outlined, depending on the building systems, what areas we would be focusing on. So, in addition to the signage, moving furniture, when you talk about adjustments in the office building, we were moving furniture so everything was 6 feet apart, signage for social distancing, asking patrons of the building to take turns, either going to the restroom or getting in the elevator or picking up packages. So wherever there were tight quarters, those areas had to be evaluated and then sort of mapped and displayed to the tenants so they knew what to expect. Specifically, tenants are very concerned about the janitorial, how frequently the cleaning is done. We even have questions about products. What products are we using? Lots of questions about the HVAC, the MERV filters. And again, those of us that manage know that we'd love to put a MERV 15 filter in the building and catch any particular particles, but not every building can sustain a MERV 15 filter. So we did in those PowerPoints outline areas of indoor air quality, different things that we were doing with the systems so that they knew we were attentive to it. And again, they have asked in writing, and those PowerPoints were able to sort of supply that situation. We do have a few larger tenants that their legal group has come to us asking us to confirm we're doing certain things. And of course, that always has to be checked with the client and Cushman Legal. But there is large concern about how we are maintaining those buildings. Lots of our clients are having us take air quality readings on a regular basis, and we're logging those and setting them up on SharePoint sites. So lots of adjustments being made.
The air quality, when you say the clients, is that the owners of the assets or the tenants of the assets?
The owners of the assets, yeah. In an effort to be proactive, they have asked us to incorporate that into our engineering protocols.
Yeah, tenants are asking that too, Michael. We have a financial service company in one of our listings that's renewing, and they're asking about, touchless features, and currently the MERV rating is 8, and they want to take it to 13 within their premises. So we've got some other tenants that are asking the same kinds of questions and just echoing what Sue said.
Which is interesting. So if a building, if their current HVAC system cannot handle a strong filter like a MERV 13, that building might be written off where before it might have been a candidate for them to go into. Is that correct or no?
I suppose that's possible in theory. How much somebody's going to hinge their decision upon a MERV rating has yet to be seen,
Right.
But it's possible.
I can say, though, so long as you have solid engineering, if you can't facilitate the MERV 13, but you can offer alternatives of what, the other actions that you're taking. Typically, in at least in my experience so far, they just want to know you're attending to it, that you're pursuing indoor air quality.
That makes sense. And I got a couple other questions here, and this really goes to everyone. Oh wait, my little question answer thing just moved. So on the whole, the commercial real estate landscape in the next year, I guess if all four of you can just touch on it real quick, and we'll go in that same order. Sue, like where do you see property management side operations in the next year? Do you see it kind of in the world we're in now, or do you see it starting to go back to normal, so to speak?
I see it a little bit in the world we're in now. I would like for there to be some relaxation in what we're having to accomplish in the office buildings. Again, industrial has remained unchanged, so it's more office that I'm speaking to. But I think that those proactive measures that we're investigating now, I think there will be some form of incorporation of those measures into the go forward. It of course depends on what the building can afford and whether or not the clients, so the owners, are interested in investing in that way. But I don't think we ever go back to where we were before.
Interesting. Phil, whoever.
Well, I was just going to echo because Sue was talking about office. So I think it's going to be relatively flat from a net absorption standpoint. It's going to be flat or negative, especially if you take into account sublease space. I think the gross leasing activity will probably be a better story. I think there's going to be a number of users that, for example, maybe in 20,000 square feet and they need to be in 10, and they still have to have an office, but they can't really downsize in their existing space because of configuration, fire exiting issues, and that type of thing. So I think overall it's going to be flat.
Okay. And then Phil, on the industrial side, I mean, just you guys are just going up and up and up.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on the cap rates, like Chris and Mike mentioned. We're seeing cap rates continue to compress and record deals out in the West Valley. Will Strong sold a sub 4.5 cap, that West 80 deal, and we're seeing a ton of investors looking to plant their flag back in Arizona or expand into Arizona on the investment side. And yeah, with the tenant activity and our tenants in the market list, we hope to see more of the same for 2021.
That's great. That's great. And then Chris, I imagine you kind of touched on it a little bit, but the next year, I imagine on the retail side is really dependent on a second round of stimulus. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah,
Or-
you're right. We're not going to be pre-COVID numbers in terms of rent collections or just rental rates anytime soon. 2021 is going to be a rough year for retail. There's going to be some more vacancy. Rental rates are going to go down a little bit. But are we going to get to those 2012 through or 10 through 12 numbers when everything was going back to the lenders and all that? I don't think so. I don't think we're going to see much bank-owned properties or anything like that here, or any extreme distress. But we're not going to be anywhere near pre-COVID in terms of just values for the time for 2021.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I only have two more questions, and I'm going to combine them both. And really, Sue, this is going to come on to you, or maybe Mike a little bit too. But it talks about just budgeting dollars for maintenance projects, for COVID maintenance, and then security as well, kind of reallocating from bodies on the ground to tech instead, to kind of where do we save costs if we're not getting as much revenue? Where do we save on the operating side? So are you seeing anything on your buildings where budget items are being reallocated or COVID projects being created, so to speak?
We are tracking the COVID expense so that when we are calculating our CAMREX, we're aware of which expenses are included that were due to the COVID event. So we are tracking COVID expenses. What the teams are trying to accomplish in this period of lower occupancy is moving forward any capital projects while the building is less occupied. They are moving forward on, you see it all across the valley. Asphalt repair is being done when there aren't as many people out and frequenting the building. So the approach has been try to push forward all of those projects that were planned and get them done now so that when people do return to the property, you're not inconveniencing them. So there is a push on that side, but in terms of actual savings, I guess it depends on the property. We had many clients that when COVID first, erupted, they said, keep our services exactly the same because we don't want any tenants to challenge us that we have reduced our services to the building in any way. And so continue business as usual. So that then left our teams to find ways of saving costs that were less visible or less necessary, sort of under the radar, in terms of just janitorial, doing a little, if we had more janitorial during the day, handling the touch points effectively, that could have meant we needed a little bit less at night because everything was much cleaner. So it really has been a journey where each team has tried different areas to save without reducing any services. With those buildings that had little or no occupancy, they did need or security where they had never before. So we're looking, I guess our biggest challenge in terms of cost savings, we're vetting the new technologies. So there's lots of new technology out there that we think could save the landlords money. But we need to first make sure it works, before we're making that recommendation. And so we're all sort of in the process of evaluating what those technologies are and how they might fit our individual properties. Does that help?
It did. That's great. Yeah. So, I mean, that was all the questions I had that people wrote in or I had written down myself. I just want to say thank you to everyone again for taking the time out. And I know personally, I was signed up for the Cushman emails and was going through your guys' public documents and kind of using them and stuff. So you guys have done a tremendous job as an organization and individuals on helping us through this pandemic, if you will. So I don't know if Robert has anything else to add or not, but I think I don't know. I just want to say thank you to everyone.
Yeah, no, I echo that as well, Michael. Thank you, Sue, Phil, and Chris for taking your time out of your busy schedules for today, and for your insight and knowledge are definitely appreciated by our board and our membership. Mike, you did a great job moderating the questions and fielding them today, so thank you as well for your efforts. I also like to thank our audience members who are all joining us today for our virtual October Industry Luncheon. Whether you're a member of BOMA or not, we are all in this together. So please remember that. I would also like to remind our members that a SurveyMonkey election slate has been sent out. So please be sure to check your email inbox and your spam/junk folder to make sure that your voice is heard. So please don't forget to vote. Lastly, our next industry luncheon will be Wednesday, December 9th, 2020. We'll be back on Zoom to wrap up the year. We'll have a great program with sponsors, awards, and a little bit more planned humor than normal to close out the year and to also honor some of our star members. Thank you again for your time today. I hope that you can walk away with some new knowledge and perspective about what's going on in all of our markets right now, whether it's industrial or office or retail or property management. So again, thank you to our guest panel, thank you to our moderator, and thank you, members. We appreciate your time today. All the best out there.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Robert.
You need a new battery in your clock.
I do. Not supposed to
Thank
see
you,
that.
Robert.
Until next time, BOMA.
All right. Take care, friend. Bye-bye.
Take care.